Hello. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Kade, and this is Catching Up with Kade. Been a little shaky social media wise. I apologize for that. I just had surgery 2 weeks ago, and the week prior to that, the episode had some complications, so I had to take it down. So it's been a little process. Thank you if you're tuning in today and tuning in whenever day you are tuning in. This is being recorded on 12/3 Wednesday. Typically, I like to have the episodes done about half a week before the release date. It is releasing tonight at 8, so definitely on crunch time. Trying not to take away from the length of the episode, but it is what it is, you know what I'm saying? If it doesn't happen today, then I will have to upload it tomorrow, I assume, so we'll see how it goes. I'm just going to jump straight into it, There are crimes we talk about, the ones that make headlines, the ones that the world talks about. But then there are crimes that nobody reports, the ones that don't leave bruises, the ones that don't come with police reports, and the ones that don't get justice, but they still destroy people. The crimes I'm talking about today are the ones that we've been told to accept. Be patient, be understanding. Oh, well, that's just how they are. You need to chill, you're just being dramatic. Or even don't take it personally. We have, as a society, I think, accepted emotional abuse. Or maybe not even, I don't know if accepted is the right word. Maybe we've normalized emotional abuse. Manipulation, burnout, gaslighting, exploitation, guilt tripping, and even silence. We have definitely normalized disrespect. We've normalized letting people drain us until we're empty and calling it love or loyalty. We've normalized workplaces that grind people down and then replace them like nothing's happened. We've normalized pretending everything is fine while people are falling apart quietly, in my opinion, So today I'm calling these things what they are: crimes. Not legal crimes, but human crimes. Crimes against your peace, crimes against your self-worth, crimes against your time, crimes against your emotional health, crimes against your energy, and crimes against your identity. So I'm going to try and break this into 6 chapters, and each chapter might hit something that you've lived, something maybe you've ignored, something that maybe you've let slide because you didn't want to be too sensitive or too much. This is going to be a good one, This is going to be a real one. So get comfortable, put your phone down, unless you're watching it on your phone. Maybe sit somewhere quiet, and let's get into the crimes we normalize. Let's start with the biggest crime we normalize: emotional theft. The emotional theft, the quiet kind, the kind that does not look violent but still takes pieces of you. Also, if you can hear any background noise, the dryer is running right now. I'm sorry about that. Emotional theft happens when people take your time, your energy, your patience, your attention, your support, your care, and give nothing back. It's the friend who only calls when they need something. Shout out Reed. The partner who wants comfort but never asks how you're doing. The family member who drains your energy every time you talk. The coworker who unloads emotionally but disappears when you're struggling. And I can say Reed's name because he's probably not even going to watch this podcast, and he's a fake friend anyway, so shout out Reed. We've been told this is normal. That's just how they are. No relationship is 50-50 or even you're overthinking. Something off the top of my head, which I've been told is something that I need to work on. I have a little bit of jealousy towards certain friends that give energy to other people, and I want that same energy back. I'm actually not going to name drop their names, but if they watch this episode, they know exactly who they are. I had a concert about a month ago, 2 months ago. I don't know. Yeah, no. I had a concert about a month ago, and I found out about this concert about a month and a half before the date, obviously, and I had invited them and told them how much it would mean to me if they showed up for me at this concert. Now, I wasn't going to be rapping or doing anything like that. And at the concert, there was other small underground artists who sing. There was country music. There was rock. So it was a big. It was just a almost like a festival type show. And I had told this person a month and a half before the concert if you could go, and he hit me with the excuse of how money's tight. But the crazy thing is he shares his location with me, and I was just being petty. This whole situation is petty on my end too. He would be out at the bars, and I would screenshot him at the bars because he didn't have money he had told me he didn't have money for a $27 concert ticket, my very first concert. And come to find out the night of which the whole him coming to the concert was this whole ordeal, and he had told me that he didn't, I don't know. The night of the concert though, he was on a date. He went out with some girl, and it's crazy. The energy is crazy. And I know I shouldn't be petty or definitely not holding things against them, but it blew my mind. Somebody who I have called a very close friend of mine for multiple years, my very first concert, and the other thing, he doesn't even follow this podcast, so I doubt he's going to hear this or see this. So I just think it's funny. I'm not going to name drop. I'm not going to be that petty, but you know who you are, bro. You know exactly who you are. And like I was talking to my mom about this situation, the way that he shows up for other people in his life is something that I wanted, and it's jealousy on my end. It definitely is jealousy on my end. I want him to support me the way he supports another friend of ours, and that's wrong of me to expect or ask that of him, So it's something I'm working on for sure. That has nothing to really do with the episode, but we were just talking about emotional. Just because, and this goes into me as well. Just because you think you show up for somebody doesn't mean you do. The same thing that I talked about my high maintenance friends, or I forget the other term that I used, but I thought I was showing up for them just because I was there, but they needed more than me just showing up. They wanted me to be involved, and that was something that I struggled with, and it is still something I struggle with, in multiple relationships in my life, whether it's with my parents, my friends, there's always stuff to work on in my opinion, So I'm going to get back into it. I'm sorry to get sidetracked and go off ranting, but the crimes we normalize, emotional theft, blah, blah, blah. Emotional theft. If you're constantly holding one space, carrying the emotional weight, being the therapist, being the safe space, while no one gives that to you, I think your emotional labor is being stolen. For sure, your emotional labor is being stolen. And the worst part is we encourage it, we reward it. We tell people who self-sacrifice that they're good friends, they're strong or empathetic. But, strong people break too. And empathetic people get drained. And people who always show up eventually show up with nothing left. We don't treat emotional energy like something valuable, but it is. You only get so much of it. And when people take and take and take, you stop recognizing yourself. I have a stat here. A 2025 National Workplace Report found that 72% of Americans describe themselves as emotionally exhausted on a weekly basis. Not physically tired, but emotionally. That came from Insurance Business Mag Report 2025. That number doesn't come from nothing. It comes from emotional labor being treated like it's free. I have another stat here. In 2025, the U.S. burnout rate hit a 6-year high, with over 65% of workers reporting they feel drained to the point of dysfunction. Forbes magazine 2025. That's not workplace fatigue, that's emotional depletion. And emotional theft doesn't just happen at work. Think about your life and think about the people in your life that take your emotional presence for granted, who assume you'll comfort them, who assume you'll be there, who assume you don't need anything because you're strong. You ever notice that the strong people never get checked on? People treat strength like it means I don't need support, when it usually means I've gotten used to not having support. In my opinion, if someone leaves you constantly emotionally drained, that is not a relationship, that is extraction. People forget this. Just because emotional pain isn't visible doesn't mean it's harmless. And most emotional theft never gets talked about. That is because we normalize it, in my opinion. We're going to move into the second chapter here. This one kind of hits deep. Emotional fraud. This is when someone sells you a version of yourself that never existed or doesn't exist. They create a persona, a mask, something carefully curated, and you invest in it. You love the version they showed you. You trust the version they showed you. But then the mask slips, and once it does, you have to face the reality that everything you built with them was based on something else or on something fake. Emotional fraud isn't always intentional, I don't think. Sometimes, people pretend because they think they have to. They don't want to scare you away. They don't want to lose you. So, they play a role. But on the second note, sometimes it is intentional. Sometimes people know exactly what they're doing. They tell you everything you want to hear. They mirror you. They study you. They shape themselves into whatever will get them what they want. This, I think, is one of the deepest emotional crimes because it leaves people often questioning their judgment, their worth, and, most of all, their ability to trust. I have a stat here. According to CDC research, 48% of U.S. adults have experienced psychological aggression from a partner, which includes manipulation, lying, and emotional deception. CDC. In some states, the rate of psychological aggression in relationships exceeds 60% for women and 50% for men. I don't know where that stat was pulled from. I'm not going to say it's a fact, but it is a stat that chat pulled for me. Shout out chat. So, that means that more than half the people listening right now have probably encountered a relationship built on emotional fraud and did not realize it until it was too late. Emotional fraud feels like betrayal, but deeper. It feels like the ground beneath you just disappears. You lose trust not just in that person, but even your own judgment. And the worst part is, I think society normalizes it. People say things like, well, that's dating, or even everybody lies a little at first, or no one is really who they are in the beginning. No, I think that's incorrect. There is a difference between putting your best foot forward and committing emotional fraud, point blank. Period. Photos. You know what I'm saying? So let's move on. We're going to jump into third chapter here. We're going to get into a crime that destroys most people, and that is manipulation. And here's the messed up part. Manipulation rarely looks like manipulation at the first part, in the beginning. It looks like love. It looks like interest. It looks like effort. It looks like care. Manipulators don't say things like, I want to control you. They, say things like, I'm just trying to look out for you. Or I don't want you talking to them because I love you. You don't need anyone but me. Even like, I only act this way because I care. And I don't think those are love. I think those are tactics. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of those examples that I just gave are potentially statements made by individuals who particularly have your best interest. I'm just giving very broad, vague statements and examples. So I don't want you to take all of those statements to heart and saying, oh, you're a manipulator if you say those things, because that's not correct. But those are common phrases used by people who will manipulate you into getting what they want out of you, you know? Manipulation steals your ability to... manipulation. My cat just fell out of her little cat house. Manipulation steals the ability to trust yourself. It is one of the most damaging emotional crimes because it doesn't just hurt you, it often rewires you. You know, gaslighting makes you feel crazy. Guilt tripping makes you feel responsible for everything. And silent treatment makes you feel like you have to earn basic attention. And I think this is a truth that most people don't like to hear. Manipulation is an emotional crime. It's maybe not emotional crime, but it is definitely emotional violence, you know? I have a stat here. Studies show that nearly 1 in 2 adults in the U.S. have experienced psychological aggression from a partner, which includes manipulation tactics and coercive control. That comes from the CDC. Have another stat here. Coercive control is one of the strongest predictors of long-term emotional damage, even more than physical aggression in some cases. NCBI 2024-2025 research summary. You know, manipulation takes away your ability to think clearly. You start defending the person hurting you. You know, you start blaming yourself. You become addicted to the good moments because they feel like relief, not love. And society normalizes manipulation by calling it, jealousy, passion, intensity, just relationship problems. But manipulation is not passion, it is possession, you know? Katniss has a cone on because she just got spayed. So she loves walking on the computer. Thank you for that. Poor kitty cat. She's got some like gabapentin in this cone. She does not like the cone. We're jumping into chapter 4 here, Katniss. So let's talk about a crime scene no one recognizes as a crime scene. And that, in my opinion, would be the workplace. We normalize abuse at work more than anywhere else. People, brag about working through lunch. People compare how little they slept. People wear burnout like a badge of honor almost. Work should not feel like a punishment, but for millions, it does. We, normalize being overworked, being underpaid, being disrespected, being emotionally drained, being on call 24/7. We normalize toxic bosses. We normalize hostile coworkers. We normalize nonstop pressure. And, we also normalize unrealistic expectations. Workplaces expect loyalty but give no loyalty back in most cases, in my opinion. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. If there is any kind of fact that you can pull from this, please, drop it down in the comment section. Like this, share this with somebody else who, might be like, yeah, check out this dude Cade. He might know what he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate any support I get. So I'm sorry for getting off topic. Let's get back into it. I have a stat here. A 2025 study found 66% of American workers say that they are burned out, not tired. Burned out to the point of emotional collapse. That came from Forbes. I have another stat here. Burnout levels this year hit a 6-year high, which experts call a national exhaustion crisis. That is from PR Newswire. This isn't normal, but we call it normal so we can survive it. We often tell ourselves and everybody else that's just how it is, or everybody hates their job, which is not true. That is not true at all. Or it's just work. It's just work. I don't know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head because I have an extremely positive outlook on just about every single situation. Am I doing the job of my dreams right now? No, I am not. Am I getting paid? Yes. Am I working? Yes. Can I walk? Yes. Can I breathe? Yes. Can I hear things? Yes. Can I see things? Yes. Can I feel things? Yes. There's so many positive takeaways that a lot of people take for granted. And unfortunately, I had to go through a near-death situation for me to take a step back and really appreciate a lot of the things I was taking for granted, because I often didn't take into consideration how blessed and lucky I am to have a roof over my head, to have food on my plate, to have a vehicle at the time, like things that we often take for granted. Unfortunately, I had to learn the very hard way about how lucky I am. And I think I always knew how blessed I was and always was appreciative of the things that I had, but going through a near-death situation really put things into perspective for me. And some people just learn like that. Some people are able to see my situation and, have some sort of newfound gratitude towards their life, because it could always be worse. That was something that pushed me through the hospital and the PT, the countless nights of pain and crying that not a lot of people saw. But there were hundreds of nights where I laid in that hospital bed, hearing monitors beep, being in pain, wondering what the next hour was going to bring to me. And nobody saw that but me and God. And I thank him for the pain, and I thank him for the suffering, because it is shaping me and allowing me to become a very strong warrior for him. I am a God-fearing man, because without him I would be nothing. 100% fact. That is a fact. So I know I give a lot of opinions, but that is my fact. And that's what I'm rocking with till the day my name is etched in granite. You know what I'm saying? So getting off topic. I'm sorry about that. Wrapping up this work segment, I don't think work shouldn't make you lose yourself. Work should not make you numb. Work should not make you cry in the car before walking in. Work should definitely not make you dread waking up. Workplace abuse is one of the most unreported emotional crimes because it hides behind productivity, in my opinion. I also want to kind of talk about the crime of silence. Silence is one of the most dangerous weapons in the world, and one of the most normalized. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if y'all can hear that, but the tornado sirens are going off. We often stay silent because we don't want to start drama. We stay silent because we don't want to look sensitive. We stay silent because we're scared we won't be believed. And we also stay silent because the people hurting us is the same one who loves us or who we love, Silence protects the abuser, silence isolates the victim, and silence keeps cycles alive. Emotional crimes survive because people don't talk about them. I have some more stats here. Millions of cases of psychological aggression, coercion, and emotional abuse go unreported every year because people are afraid of being judged or dismissed. That comes from the CDC. I have another one. Experts say emotional abuse is one of the least reported forms of relationship violence, despite being one of the most common. NCBI. Silence makes you believe that the pain is normal. Silence convinces you maybe it's not that bad. Silence also makes you carry shame that was never yours. You cannot heal what you refuse to name, and you cannot break cycles that you pretend are not happening. You cannot save yourself if you keep quiet. last chapter I have here. This chapter is the reconstruction chapter, because after everything we've talked about, emotional theft, fraud, manipulation, workplace abuse, and silence, there's one more truth, and that is that you do not have to live like that. And I don't mean it in a motivational quote way. I mean it literally. Your life can feel different. You can rewire your emotional world, and you 100% can take your power back. It starts with this. Name the crime. If it hurt you, if it drained you, if it made you lose yourself, it wasn't just how they are. Set boundaries without apologizing, because you don't owe anyone access to you. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Leave environments that destroy you, even if it's scary, even if it feels impossible, even if you don't know what comes next. There's nothing wrong with taking that leap. Have faith, my friends. Have faith. Rebuild your relationship with yourself, because after emotional crimes, we lose trust in ourselves more than anything. My poor kitty. She just got spayed. And lastly, speak up. Tell your story. Give someone else the courage to see theirs. When I first decided to start this podcast, I didn't know what direction I was going to go with it and how I wanted to carry out my episodes. But upon me speaking on the numerous topics that I have discussed, I have gotten multiple texts from multiple people letting me know that it is encouraging to hear my opinion on some of these ideas, and it's helping them get through a tough season of their life. And that is awesome. That is exactly what I am here trying to do, is to help other people and to let other people know that they are not alone. If nobody else in your circle is being an advocate or a friend for you, I will be that friend for you. I will be that advocate for you. I will be the shoulder for you to lean on. And, I have my own burdens and I carry my own weight. And if you expect something out of me, I just hope you reciprocate the same energy that I am willing to give to you. So that's kind of what I wanted to say with this last chapter. Your peace is not a luxury. Your energy is not free. Your time is not disposable, and your worth is not negotiable. What you normalize will shape your life. So I hope you choose carefully, just as I am doing. Or at least trying to, So if you felt any part of this episode, if you recognized a pattern, a person, a job, a memory, I want you to know you're not dramatic. You are not overreacting, even though sometimes overreaction is a thing. And also, you're not imagining things. You're waking up. And in my opinion, waking up hurts before it heals. For sure. So I encourage you to share this episode with someone who might need it. And, tell your story in the comments if you feel comfortable. And always remember, what you accept becomes your normal. And I hope and encourage you that you choose a normal that does not break you. So thanks for catching up with me today. As always, I hope everyone stays beautiful and stays blessed and, continues to keep growing and working on themselves. If you have any episode suggestions or ideas, please let me know. Drop them in the comments, DM me, email me, however it is that you want to get a hold of me. Please do. So thanks for listening. Peace.